First off, increasing the value of practice. Hopefully, all of you have a practice. That's one of the most important things. But in most cases, understanding and leading your practice by numbers will improve the financial position of your business. I mean, that's a given, especially when we're in dentistry. Uh, Myself and my team out here, we're very passionate about what we do. It's looking and seeing at relevant information. And so a lot of things we're going to go over today are number driven. So I hope you have your pen and paper because we're going to get going through that. But before we jump into anything, I wanted to talk about degrees. In life, a few degrees can mean a lot. If we're talking about 2 degrees mathematically, this is how we equate it. A difference of 2 degrees from 1 foot from point A to point B in 1 foot is less than half an inch. If we take that out to a mile, it's 60 yards. If we take it out to 1,300 miles, it's 28 miles. And you can see how this is like a pie. It's growing and it can change dramatically. And that's going to be our story. In 1979, a large passenger jet with over 250 people on board left New Zealand to be sightseeing in Antarctica, and they were going to come back. Unknowing to the pilots, the flight coordinates were off by a mere 2 degrees on their instruments. Not ever checking with the air traffic control people or for insurance or guidance or anything like this. This error placed the aircraft 28 miles to the east of where the pilots wanted to be. As they approached this place, Antarctica, the pilots descended to a lower altitude to give the passengers a better look at the landscape. So everyone's really excited. They're going to be going down to see Antarctica. They've never seen it before. And although both experienced pilots they had although they were experienced, without the proper indications and gauges, and without checking with, like I said, the ATC, they had no way of knowing that the incorrect coordinates had placed them directly in the path of the dreaded Mount Rubeus. It's now an active volcano that rises from now and then and from the frozen landscape there. Anyhow, the objective of this brief webinar is to help you arrive to your destination and understand what you can do today to ensure that you don't find yourself off course. Or maybe you're off course right now and you want to get back onto course, get to goals that you want to be. But I want you to leave knowing that what actions you need to do to take place immediately to live the lifestyle you want to live and also have the practice where you want it to be. Not where someone else wants it to be, but where you want it to be. And that's very important. We'll be going over that over and over again. So here's the main topic we're going to be talking about is butts in the chair. Ultimately, what we want to do to increase the value of our practice is to get butts in the chair. Now that might sound simple, but when it comes down to it, when you boil it all down, that's what we want to do. We want to get people into our practice and into the dental chair. So there's 3 aspects that I want us to look at to getting butts in the chair. The first one is pretty obvious. All right, it's new patients. This is something you hopefully already track. It's a default number within most practices. They track that and collections or production. Those are mainly the numbers most practices look at. But we also have reappointment. Now, reappointment is very important that every hygiene patient should be asked to make a return appointment. And then lastly, you have your cancels or no-shows. And not knowing this number can be as you can see there, can be very catastrophic for your practice. Now, oftentimes, like I said, people think that number 1 is the issue. If they're not getting butts in the chair, they're like, oh, we need to get new patients. I need to put more marketing dollars in. I need to go outside with a tooth costume and direct people into my practice. I need to send out mailers. I need to get a billboard. I need to tell all my patients to refer. Whatever it is, that's what they feel like it is. They feel like, oh, I need to get new patients. That might be the case, but without knowing number 2 and number 3, where your pre-appointment percentage is at and where your cancellation percentage is at, then there's no way for you to know where to put your money or direct your efforts. So I'm going to get you some guidelines here. This is where I really want you to write this down. Number one, with the new patients, the goal, pretty simple, pretty obvious, as many as possible. As long as you've got an empty chair, you want to get a new patient in. But let's first make sure we can fill in those other spots first. So number two, the reappointment, the goal, we want it to be at 90% or better. Now, in working with practices, we talk to doctors, talk to office managers all the time, and we say, okay, we want you to be at 90% or better. Like, oh, we're already there. Everybody in our practice gets a return appointment. That is typically 99% of the time is not the case. When we look at their numbers, pull all the data, all the information, they're in the 60s, as low as from 30% to 60% on reappointment. When that happens over and over again, you are losing your active patient base. And more importantly, you're having to get more new patients than what you already have. And I'm sure you've heard this over and over again, but number two, that reappointment is very important. So our goal, 90% or better. Next is cancellations, no-shows. Our goal on this one is to be less than 15. Ideally, we like to be at lower than 10%. Now, how do you know if you have this number or not, or how do you know what this percentage is or not? Most of the time, you have your front office or your team leader telling you, hey, look, we only have, I feel like we have had a lot of people cancel or no-show, or I feel like we're doing really good on cancels or no-shows. The real way to pull this is either by some report or by manually putting it down, putting who you had at the beginning of the day and who you had at the end of the day. But there, with some practice management softwares, there is a way to check that cancellation or no-show. In looking at this, no matter where you're at, no matter what your situation is, I don't want you to fall into this next category. Don't want you to become a victim. These numbers may sound a little scary. They may sound unobtainable because of what notions are going on in your community or within your practice. But I can tell you from personal experience, we've worked with offices nationwide, and every location, every type of practice is able to attain those numbers. So don't feel like that's not possible. Don't feel like that's something that you're not going to be able to hit those levels, because you truly and very, as long as you follow these next few steps, you will be hitting those numbers. Okay, so let's get some information here. Let's get some background, some examples to make sure that we are hitting these numbers, okay? First off, I want to talk about a social proof that we're going to relate to appointments. You see I got towels over there on the right. We people, and everybody on this planet that is here, when people are uncertain about the course of action, about what to do, we tend to look at those around us to guide us, and we tend to follow, especially when we want to know what everyone else is doing, especially our peers. So there's this team that ran a soon-to-be published experiment which sees different types of signs to encourage an Arizona hotel or Arizona hotels visitors to reuse towels. I'm sure you've seen them within a hotel before. But they put up 3 different signs, or they put up 4 different signs. But the first one cited that environmental reasons to encourage visitors to reuse their towels. So because of the environment, we encourage you to reuse your towel. The second one said that the hotel would donate a portion of end year's laundry savings to an environmental cause. So you can see those 2 numbers are low. The third one here said that the hotel is giving a donation and asked, will you please join us? So they're saying, hey, we're going to donate. Will you please join us? It jumps 10%. Well, with all 3 of these suggestions, there's something that the hotel has to do, right? They have to actually do something with each of those products. Well, what's amazing is this fourth one. Not only is it a higher percent, but it also makes it so that the hotel guests actually do reuse their towels. And the sign said, a majority of guests reuse their towels at least once during their stay. Did you catch that? It said the majority of guests reuse their towels at least once during their stay. The hotel doesn't have to do anything extra. They're not having to donate to a cause or anything like that. They're able to take for almost half of their people who are staying at their hotel to reuse their towels by that simple sign on telling them what everyone else is doing. Interesting, right? Okay, let's look at the next one. The next one is commitment and consistency, and we're going to relate this to cancellations, or to be even more specific on this one with reappointment, with that sign, the fourth sign there. We like to make sure that when we do ask people to come into our practice, or when we're asking them to reappoint, that we're saying that most people, what they want to do is that they like to schedule 6 months ahead, and they typically like to, and you look at your calendar here, they typically like to come in at 1 o'clock. Do most people like to come in at 1 o'clock? No. But when other people hear that, when they're hearing from the practice that that's what people like to have, they want to say, well, I want that 1 o'clock spot then. Now all of a sudden you're filling up your afternoons, you're getting people to be reappointed, when just simply saying, hey, this is what other people are doing, what would you like to do? It's a simple phrase that we use for reappointing. Rather than saying, would you like to set your next appointment? Instead of saying that, saying something more along, following this social proof of saying the majority of X does this. All right, so commitment and consistency for cancellations and no-shows. So this is something that's really bad in some practices and other practices are doing really good at. But there was let me even back up from here. People don't like to back out of deals, myself included. We're most likely to do something after we've agreed to it verbally or in writing. People strive for consistency in their commitments. They also prefer following pre-existing attitudes, their values, their actions. So there's another study done in 1987. There's a social scientist, Anthony Greenwald, who approached potential voters on Election Day Eve and asked whether they would vote and to provide reasons why or why not they would vote. Astoundingly, 100% of them said they would vote. Now, you think 100% of them actually voted? No. No, they didn't. But let's see here. I've got a little timeout. There we go. No, they didn't. But those on Election Day, 87% of those who were asked went to the polls, compared to 61% of those who were not asked. So those who publicly committed to voting on the previous day proved to be more likely to actually vote. They're the ones who, that's over, 25% there? Yeah, 25%. That they, more people that voted based on saying, hey, yes, I will vote. All right, so both people want to be both consistent and true to their word. Getting customers and team members, even our own team members in our practices, to publicly commit to do something makes them more likely to follow through with an action. So give this a try to even tomorrow. Ask your team members if they'll support your whatever initiative. Maybe it's even tracking those 3 numbers that we talked about earlier. Ask them if they'll support and tell them why. Getting people to answer yes makes them more powerfully committed to the action. This guy who did the study said, for instance, don't ask people, please, like our patients, don't ask them, please, can I call you please call if you need to cancel. Instead, when we're talking with our patients, I want you to say, if you need to reschedule, will you please give us 24-hour notice? See the big difference there? Rather than saying, please call us if you have to reschedule, or not saying anything at all, which is even worse, but simply saying, if you need to reschedule, will you please give us 24 hours? And then wait. Wait to see, wait for them to say yes. As soon as they say yes, you're going to get that large percentage of people who you're missing before, because it measurably increases their response rate, or the action rate, I should say. All right, so I'm going to go into consistency here. We're going to stay right here. So that was the whole commitment part. We want to make sure people say yes. That's the most important thing. We want them to say yes to a specific thing that we're asking them for. All right, so as far as consistency, as we get older, you know, I just had my birthday, a couple weeks ago, or a couple days ago. And the more we value, the older we get, the more we value our consistency. There's a researcher named Stephanie Brown who co-authored the 2005 study that was titled Evidence of Positive Relationship Between Age and Preference of Consistency. Anyway, it was published in 2005, and the study confirmed the belief that as we get older, we get set in our ways. What's the solution? What we want to do is praise them. What we want to do is we want to praise them. We want to tell them, hey, thank you for doing this. So when we have a patient who comes into our office and they're coming in time and time again, we want to say, hey, thank you for being always on time. We really value your time, and we really appreciate you being on time for your appointment, or whatever it is that we want to praise them on. So the two things that we want to do is we want to get patients to say yes, and then we also want to praise the good behavior. In doing so, our cancellation and no-show percentage is going to go down, and that's what we want. We want it to go as low as possible. If you remember the percentages, 15% is preferable, but ultimately what's desired is under 10%. Okay, let's see here. All right. So naturally, we've got within our practice and within all the numbers to increase the value of our practice, there's over 400, easily over 400 numbers that we could be looking at. I've only given you 3/4 with the cancellations, no-shows. And we often get people, because of what we do, we gather all the information within somebody's practice, and whether it's from their practice financials, whether it's from Excel sheets, whether it's from their QuickBooks, or whatever it's from, we pull that all together and use our business intelligence to tell them what to do, kind of like a crystal ball, rather than what a report does. A report tells you what happened in the past. My dashboard, what it does is it tells you what to do. And so we gather all those numbers and we tell you what to do. So here's the example. Here's the case study that I told you I'd talk to you about. We've got a doctor who lives in Park City. He's been working at a school, well, actually had his own practice. He was an associate even before but he had his own practice working 8+ years, and he only was taking home $70,000 a year. That's not even enough to pay off your student loans. But because he wasn't retired yet, because he was wanting to retire shortly, and he wanted to increase the value of his practice, he asked us to look at all of his numbers, all 400+ numbers. We did so. At the time, he had flat production, as you can see there. He felt like the perception of the community was viewing him as poor because he was only taking home $70,000 a year. He also bought a CEREC machine or a CAD CAM, I should say, and I had a few people say have negative reviews. But he wanted to sell his practice and work as an associate so that he could retire. Well, we took all of his information, and not only did he have tremendous results within a year, but within just 30 days, he could see that he was on track. The value of his practice was going up, and ultimately, within 12 months, he was able to take home over $400,000. And with that, he was able, at a year, he was able to had a new full-time assistant and worked 1 day less a week. How amazing is that? I mean, that's just from looking at numbers, just from knowing what to do, what numbers to improve. We weren't telling him, hey, this is how you improve the number. We were just saying, hey, here's the information, you go do it. You need to increase these numbers. If you track those three numbers that I told you at the beginning, new patients, reappointing, and the no-shows and cancellations, track those consistently and improve them in whichever direction they need to be going in, the value of your practice is going to go up tremendously. So that was his story. There's a quote that I really enjoy. It's called, when performance is measured, performance improves. And when performance is measured and reported back, the rate of improvement accelerates. A few people take claim to that quote, but one person that took claim to that quote was the Oregon track coach. Oh goodness, what is his name? Just forgot, slipped my mind. But he said he was a fond believer in the fact that when you measure performance, performance will improve. And if you want to take it to the next step, measure it and report it back to someone else, it'll go even quicker. So just keep that in the back of your mind as going forward. So as I said, typically people do the manual method. They take all the numbers within their practice. Let's see here. Oh yeah, there you go. Take all the numbers within their practice. There's tons of them. There's over 400 of them. My automated system, what it does is it takes those same numbers, condenses them, and puts them onto a daily dashboard that you can look at. Really key and simple. And how we relate that to is a dashboard for the pilot. The pilot can't fly a plane without data or instruments and to control his plane. In fact, the cockpit is massive. It's got all these gadgets and everything going on. But how they know what to fix? There is a metric that tells them, warning, something's going wrong. And that's what ours is. So like, for example, warning, reappointment that needs to happen. And from doing that, they're able to make the proper adjustments. For example, if reappointment is out of line, we need to get our butts in the chair. We need to realign performance to get butts in the chair, or whichever metric it is. That's what your action needs to be. So rather than just telling you information, it's actually saying, hey, this is what's going on. You need to get it up to X. And having these key performance indicators, you may have heard of that before, KPIs. When you get them all realigned for performance, your success is going to go out the roof. You're going to go from, for example, that doctor in Park City who went from taking home $70,000 to over $400,000. Your take home, your happiness, your lifestyle is going to improve. Here's something interesting though. Here's me on the, I believe that's your left, the bald-headed guy. My brother is a pilot. He's the guy right next to me. That's his girlfriend in the back. But he took me on a plane and said, hey, Curtis, you want to control it? I go, okay, controlling it. And I've talked about dashboards and know the importance of them. And I said, all right, Scott, that's my brother. His name's Scott. I go, Scott, tell me, was it like way difficult back in the day to fly a plane without this dashboard? Because he had a sweet looking I mean, it was all digital. Everything was nice. It beeped, it alerted, it showed him where to go, it showed him the maps and everything. And he goes, no, it's very easy to fly a plane without dashboards. I go, interesting. But then he followed up by saying, but there's a lot less accidents and a lot less mistakes that happen with a dashboard. So yes, it's possible to fly a plane or to run a practice without a dashboard, but having all those numbers in front of you just helps. It makes it easier, puts you safe at mind. And with that, I'm going to just kind of share the last little story with Mount Erebus. With Mount Erebus, it turned out to have a very sad ending. As the pilots we were discussing at the beginning were flying into Antarctica, They flew onward. The white of the snow and the ice-covered volcano blended in with those clouds as they were going down to view Antarctica, making it appear as though they were flying over flat ground. By the time the instruments that they had available started sounding warnings, and I'm sure it was going off like a fire engine, but as soon as those alarms went off, the ground was rising toward them, and it was too late. The plane crashed to the side of the volcano, killing everyone on board. It was a terrible tragedy brought on by just a few minor errors, and really, they were only 2 degrees off of where they wanted to be. And so, like I said, depending if you want to be somewhere else or if you are off track right now, let's correct that degree, get you on course to where you want to be or where you thought you should be. There's so many key performance indicators, so many metrics to follow. These are just a couple of them. I've got a few in red that I really like. That middle one being reappointment percentage. If you remember, 90%. If you didn't write that down, 90% is where we want to be at. Over that, excuse me. Ultimately, I love you to have 100%, but typically some people will reject. But take that information back. Use that social experiment to your advantage. Use the towels example, that verbiage. Use the person who has to vote. You make sure that you not only praise the person, but that you also get them to say yes, and wait for them to say yes, so that you can increase those percentages, or in the cases of no-shows, you decrease them. This was it. I've got a